Hi Amelia, my name's Alex. I'm one of the TAs for Art Prof, and today we're going to be reviewing your portfolio. You've sent us your artist statement and the pieces, and how this is going to work, we'll go through your portfolio piece by piece, as it were, and kind of talk about what's working, what needs improvement, and as we go through it, we'll start to compile things that you are doing well for your work and things that could be improved as you continue your portfolio work. So starting off with this piece, in general, and this is going to be a comment I'll make a couple times in this review, I think you need to push more your sense of depth. And this is one of the most successful pieces that you've done with it. I want you to notice how in the eyes, like in the bridge of the nose, look at how you're fading between a nice gray and getting into a darker dark, and then into the eye sockets. It's just this beautiful pitch black, and that's fantastic. And now I want you to look down below the chin at the character's neck, and you see how that doesn't quite convey the sense of depth as the area around the eyes and the nose does? I think the thing that you need to work on in some pieces, like in the case of this piece, it's a matter of just a little bit of tweaking here and there. Take the bridge of the nose. If you added one bright shine of a highlight right there at the tip, that would really push the space forward. Look at the things you're doing well, like the eyes and the area of the lower lip and how it fades into the chin. Look at those areas, push those areas further, and I think that's going to bring you a lot of success in the future works that you do. But keep an eye on that as you're moving forward with it. This piece, same thing, where I think you need to work more on how you're carving out the space. For example, the character's two eyes, they look to be at about the same level, or the same space in front of me. However, the character's right eye should be further in the background. Like, explore the lighting a little bit more on how to do that. Something that this one is doing really well is I like what you're doing with the eraser technique within the hair. I think that's doing some really cool things, and I'd like to see you do that throughout the rest of the face. Almost, this is one of those pieces where, imagine a big rubber stamp that says redo on it, because I'd love to see you try your hand at this one again and incorporating that exciting texture into the rest of the piece. There's something that this one and the previous one are doing well, which is a sense of mood, a sense of emotion. That's coming across very well, and it kind of helps these transcend that level of just standard traditional portraits. However, both of the moods seem fearful and more on the negative emotion sides. Not that that's a bad thing at all, but I'd be curious to see you push yourself into one that's a different kind of feeling invoked. Now this one, transitioning the same thought, it kind of doesn't show me anything more than these other two have. I would like to see the textures kind of pushed a little more, mostly with the image on the left. I'm not sure if that water is meant to be a liquidy, drippy water or a slow, thick syrup. So I'd be curious to see flex that out and try your hand at it again. Also with texture, but something this one's doing quite well, is that transition between piece number 1, number 2, and number 3. I'm enjoying that transition where it all seems to be part of the same series, but it's slowly exploring itself. However, this one does bring up a point that will come up again, where the figure for all 6 of these images does seem to be the same. Now for this one, of course, it's a series, they should be. I would challenge you to explore different models. And these don't have to be professional models, it could be friends or family, but that's something that's really important to show with technical portrait-based work like this, is you want to show that you can do different ages, different genders, different races, really push the boundaries and show your skill set. This is a really nice, and you're really doing some good things with texture, especially those areas where you're letting the texture of the paper come through with the really light cover of charcoal. That's being really nicely done. As well as with the previous pieces, the sense of space needs to be pushed a little more. The area at the bottom of the stairs with the trash can in through the doorway, that seems to come closer in space than I wish it would. And a way to stop that is to up the subtlety, as funny as that sounds, just up the subtlety in the definition of that space. Make it appear a little bit more in the distance, like what's happening in the upper left. However, with the upper left, that's starting to blend in with the railing of the stairway. Do you see that? Where it's working really well is the center bottom left, where the 2 rungs of the stairway meet. Look at how defined and how clear that space is. That's coming across really, really well. So bring those skill sets into the rest of it. You're going to really come across with something good here. This is one of your more successful pieces in some areas, and in other areas, it needs a little bit of work. The thing that I really love about this one is how, for this one, you're carving that space around the form. You're carving the musculature and you're bringing the human body out of that, and in a really exciting way that you're not doing quite as well in some of your other pieces. The area that's really calling out to me, look at the right rib. See how you have that nice crisp shadow just carving out, and then just so confidently you're bringing that highlight of the eraser through there. That is just really making some nice form with this, and I love that. Where this needs to improve, I think, is the anatomy. The hand definitely calls out to me at first, as well as the left leg. And again, this is what we said earlier about how you need to create more of that sense of space and depth. Look at how the leg stops, and then look back at this piece and see how, again, the area where the stairway on the left is going up, see how it's that slow fade. I would love to see that brought into that area above the left leg. But it's a really nice study, this one. You should be proud of it. In a really big way, it shows that thing that you need to work on, which is how to carve out space and how to shape the form within the painting. Look at the area on the left side of the torso of the figure. The figure's left, I mean. All right. See how it doesn't really seem to rest in the dark purple fabric? It seems to be cut out. Definitely study that figure a little bit more and see how you could really convince it. Now, that's an area where it appears most strongly, but this problem is prevalent anytime you have this figure interacting with the background. It doesn't really turn into a gradual transition, nor does it seem to be like a clean cut. It never quite works, and the figure doesn't believably sit within the space. Look again at this piece, and again, that gray area below the right rib, and how that's carving through. And then as it curves into the armpit below the right pectoral, and see how that dark shadow really makes it a believable form created, quality into a piece like this. It's starting to happen with that shadow below the figure's right breast. It's starting to work out there. I would push that a little bit further. Where this piece is working out, though, is the color. I think you're doing some really terrific and bold things with that green. For someone who's just a junior prepping for art school, that's a rare thing to find. You're bringing those exciting colors, the greens, the purples, and you're pushing the boundaries of the colors that are used in figure drawing. And so I would really commend you on that. I also really enjoy the brushstrokes that you have present here. I would like to see some more variety with them, but I enjoy them. This is, to me, one of your most successful pieces because it solves a problem that you have in other pieces. So I want you to look at this piece, and especially the area on our right side, so the figure's left side, where that blonde hair hits that soft gray blue. Look at how that space is defined. Look at how you're creating that sense of depth. And I think this dyed watercolor paper and cut paper pasting technique really was a breakthrough for you in how to do this and how to really push that level. So look at that, again, look at that area in the top right of the piece and the space created, and keep that in mind as you explore these past pieces and see how that sensibility could really be used to make that space really believable. I'm not saying that you're always failing at space, because you're not. You're doing some really terrific things throughout. But this is one of the pieces that is most strongly displaying the strengths that you have with it. And I would just bring this skill set, without using the cut paper again, into the other pieces that you have. And in some cases it involves just a little bit of tweaking here and there. Like I said with the first piece. Yeah, this one's doing a really nice job with the colors as well, the blues and the orange kind of balancing out with each other. This one, too, is one of your more successful pieces. It is because it's showing the strength of technique you have, but also you're allowing yourself to be a little bit more bold and exciting with it. Much like this piece we talked about earlier, it's a successful series that has a little bit of extra emotional punch to it. I like the mixed media effect, how it looks like some aspects of this are digitally incorporated and then still the traditional. It's really cool. Your colors in this one are some of my favorites in your portfolio. Let's examine the figure on the left for a second. Look at how nice that is with that dark purple underpainting, the subtle like dirty blonde of the hair, and that yellow playing perfectly with the muted soft white purple. That is awesome, dude. You should be so proud of what you've done with that. However, I gotta say for this one again, it looks like this figure is the same as this figure, is the same as all of these figures. Again, you really do need to balance the variation in the people that you're drawing. And I say this because I had this problem, and unless I focus on it, I still do have this problem. It's a common problem for artists to have, but it's something that I think you need to be aware of. Yeah, man, this is a really successful little triptych you've done here. Yeah, nice work. Oh, the eyes and the figure on the right, and like the lips, the structure of the face, the depth created, the color. You should be really proud of this one. With this one and this other comic piece as well. In a nutshell, I don't think they belong in your portfolio. I think that your strengths are greater than what's presented here. I want to clarify this a little bit. I'm not saying that comics shouldn't be in a portfolio. I just think that you need to make comics that show the strength of your ability, and I don't think either of these do. They show not enough character creation. They don't show enough visual narrative. They don't show exciting visual storytelling. I really think that with the kind of quality that we've seen in your previous work and the strength that you have, these bring the whole thing down. If you want to show comics and this character creation world, which in your artist statement you say you do, you just gotta push that. Let's reel it back and talk about this one first. I enjoy the play of subtle color in there. The narrative becomes very talking heads, not a lot of action, not a lot of movement. The message is a little confusing and then fairly simple. Yeah, I just think it needs to be pushed further. Likewise with this one, except add a little bit more confusion into it. It doesn't really come across very well, and the character creation and the mark making, yeah, it's not really doing it for me. You can have something simple in style, something graphic, but it needs to be pushed to a higher level than these are. Something that you should definitely check out, Will Eisner, of course, who's just, if you're looking at comics, look at Will Eisner. I would check out the piece that I fell in love with him is A Contract with God. And it was, to my knowledge, his last published work. Oh, it's incredible. And what I would encourage you to do is to do some master copies of some panels of Will Eisner's work. And I think those will really show you how to use visual storytelling and how to use the composition of each panel. Push yourself in that way. All the crops are pretty much at the same spot, that point right above the knee or right above the waist. Yeah, I like the red and the yellow. I think those colors are working well together. And I like how you're using marker of the same tones. But really, yeah, I kind of had to reach for those. These, yeah, your work is so much stronger than these two present. This is pretty great, and I think it just needs a little bit of tweaking with the value to create the space more, but I really enjoy it. I love that combination of ink and watercolor is, to me, that's just a winner. Those two mediums are they naturally work well together. I love how outside the window, you're foregoing the ink and just going with a wash to create that space going in there. I would push that a little bit further because look at what you're doing here. When you outline with the ink, you're creating the world that is inside. When you stay with just the wash, you're creating the world that is outside. Now it looks like you were a little timid with the wash. You didn't want it to be too bold, and I would make it just a little bit bolder. Because again, it's not outlined by the ink. You are already creating a separate world out of that. So rest easy on that. You have that going for you. The mark making that you're using for the ink, keep in mind that when you're combining watercolor and ink, the watercolor and the ink can both create the value. An area where you're doing that really well, right behind the sink, that line where it's a light gray wash and then the cross-hatching of the ink marks, boom, you're using both mediums pretty well. Look beneath where the water is trickling over. You see how that gray, when it gets to the black behind the plant leaf, that looks like a space underneath the counter. But when it fades to a lighter gray beneath the dripping water, that looks like it's kind of coming forward into space, and it's a little visually confusing. This is a big example of how the need to create realistic depth in pieces can make or break a piece when it comes to a concept. I would either darken up that area with ink wash or add some textured cross-hatching to that. I like the mood present in this. I like the story. I think you're doing some great things in different areas with the watercolor wash. Yeah, this is nicely done. This is one of your most successful pieces. Hands down, I love this piece. I love it because it's showing pattern, it's showing some great characterization. It has this deeper level inside of it, it has this deeper meaning. This one is a great one to keep in mind when looking back at the comics. You see how simple and graphic you've made this, but how wonderfully successful it is? Each one of those characters you've made has a personality, they have a world, they have their own story to tell. and your technique is perfectly helping them tell their story, this is just, it's knocking it out of the park. I love it. And it's also it's very simple. It's very graphic. It's not as intense and detailed as this, nor is it as kind of labored and studied as this one. And yet it is worlds above the comics you've made. Do not be discouraged. Bring this quality into your comics and character creation world, and I think you'll find great success. Yeah, the colors for this are working really well. The patterning, like the character, oh man. Yeah, these are really nicely done. This one, I think it needs a little bit more like spice to it. Yeah, like you're baking, you're using the seasonings. This one needs just a little bit more cayenne. Yeah, you're showing some interesting qualities with the digital work. I think some of the brush heads you're using are pretty standard and they don't really show off your skill set as well. The kind of effect you're doing, which was done here as well, and some of your other pieces of that kind of blurred drag across, I think that it doesn't really work too well in this one. And when it comes across in this one, then it seems like a gimmick in some of the others. So this is a good example of you want to have all of your pieces be consistently good, because any negative piece, any bad piece can bring down the rest of the portfolio. With this one, there's some anatomy that needs working out. The colors are working well, but again, what I was saying about this needs some spice, like the character doesn't really translate to me. I don't get a sense of who she is, what she wants. I think you need to show, with your interest in character design, I think you need to show more character studies. So what I would do is I would run out and check out a library or pick up a copy of like an artist book. Disney and Pixar are great places to start. I just recently flipped through the art book for Zootopia, and that has some terrific character design sketches of character studies, the process of making those characters. And I think when you have a portfolio where, and again in your interest, you say you want to go into character design and character creation, I think you need to show that process, keeping that process in mind as you create your characters. Like, what's their drive? What's their message? And does that translate to the viewer? The thing that is very difficult about character design, but also the most fun, is that every element of it can help to tell about who that character is. And for this one, I'm just not getting enough from it. Like, yeah, I'm getting a little bit like, ethereal, mystical, kind of quasi-spooky, but a little misunderstood. But yeah, like I'm not getting too much out of it. This one, I think it needs a little bit of work. The first thing that comes to me is that it's another figure that looks very similar to this figure that keeps showing up in the work. Just something to be aware of. The space is okay that you're created. The head looks a little too large for the body. And yeah, the brushes that you're using are pretty basic, and they're not really showing a lot of what you can do elsewhere. While it is important to show some digital work in a portfolio nowadays, I think that more work like this is really your strong suit with that. And that these two, they don't, to me, show a lot of the strength that you have. Now, that's not to say, cut them out, don't use them, we don't need them. No, like if it's something that you want to have in your portfolio, I'd include it, but I would push it up to the next level first. So yeah, a lot more practice with various brushes for this in Photoshop. I'm assuming you're using Photoshop for this, because you're doing some good things with the hair there. That technique you're using to make that texture, yeah, I would just kind of push it a little bit further. This one, such a good piece to end on because, wow, this piece is knocking it out of the park. I love it. I think that it has a really good narrative quality while at the same time showing some really impressive technique. The problem that occasionally comes in your work is not here at all. The depth you're making, the space, your use of light and dark, and all the grays in between, it's such a good technique for you. And I think in the same way that the cut paper one was a good technique for you, because it pushes you to explore that new level of how to create space. Yeah, using this one, and yeah, let's throw this one in as well. Using those as kind of like dividing rods to guide you into perfecting your portfolio, yeah, like hold those close and follow in that direction. Now, I'm not saying to do everything in these techniques. The fact that I like the cut paper one doesn't mean that you should have a portfolio where everything's cut paper. Just look at what's working in those and try to replicate it in areas further, you know? This piece, see that figure lying in the bed and then the background, that great shape that's slowly fading into the white? You should be very proud of this piece. It's really nice. A lot of times you see when people work with this, you get very cautious, but no, like you're having fun with this, and that sense of play comes out well, and it has this kind of mood and emotion. And that sense of play, that's what needs to be brought into this one and this one. They need that sense of fun. They need that sense of kind of excitement you're having. Notice how when I set this up, I had the pieces that were of similar, let's say, concept, similar technique, similar mood, all arranged together. You do want to organize your portfolio in that way. You want to have similar pieces combined. You also want to start and finish with two strong pieces. You want to begin with a showstopper, and you want to conclude with something that says, and that's what I got. So that's something about the organization as well. And then with your artist statement, with what you said about the kind of work you want to get into. One, I would study more different models. And again, they can be friends, family, people you see on the bus, but you do really need to show different kinds of people, different ages, different genders, etc., in your figure drawing. And include about 15 of those. Not to say any of the ones you've included in this portfolio are not good enough, but I think that once you do a couple more, you're going to get to this other level where like you're not even going to want to use any of these. So just be aware of that. It's that portfolio curse where you create one piece and you're like, man, I need to make more like this. And then 3 pieces later, that piece is obsolete. So I would create 5 with varying different kinds of figures and people for more traditional studies. For your character creation, I would do a lot more character studies. I would show world building, and that includes not just single characters in a single, like, look at this, there is no world, there's no environment. Create those environments, create that world that this character belongs in, create multiple characters this character interacts with. That would be the other thing too. I would say don't show, say, 5 characters that you make all in different worlds. It might be helpful to show like 2 characters that are connected, that are in the same world, one image of the world they belong in, and then another 2 images of, say, 2 characters that are in a different world. And yeah, again, like check out those artist books, check out those character sketches, look at the pros, see what they're doing, mirror that kind and method of work. In a portfolio, it might be good too to kind of, let's say, quote unquote, cheat and have one image that you submit. And in that image, you have a final character study that's a complete work of art. And then to the left of it, you have some of the character sketches that show you exploring the character's hair, the character's personality, the character's different facial expressions. I just think that if that's an interest that you have, it needs to be shown more than it's shown here. I would show more work like this. This is a really nice example of powerful illustration, great character creation. I don't want to see like a series of patterns of different people. No, like there's this piece, which is good, and then incorporate some of the things you have here. Then look up things like Will Eisner's Contract with God, soup up your comics a little bit, really make those a little something special. For this one, yeah, I think that right now this piece is like 7 out of 10 for me. Once you build up your skill set by creating more of those fixes for your other pieces, you will find yourself improving so quickly that you'll be like, oh man, I gotta redo that. Like, not to spoil the ending, but I think that's gonna happen for that piece with the water here. I think that you've got some really good things going. Most successfully, you have a way to convey mood in your pieces. That is, you're doing it so well. It needs to be pushed just a little bit further, but your sense of light and dark is really starting to unfold. It just needs to work better with creating a space as well. I'm so excited to see where your work goes with this. I think this is like a good first portfolio. Even though like I did advise like a lot of recreations and a lot of edits for this, that's what leads to a great portfolio. Bring all of this and then take it to that next step, and then I guarantee you your next portfolio is gonna blow it away, and this one, yeah, it's gonna be like a completely different hand. And I'm so excited to see that next transformation of your work. Best of luck to you, and I'm really excited to see where the next portfolio goes.